Welcome to The Detail. I am your host, Kathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5, LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1, LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. So thanks so much for joining us. You are also able to see us if you choose online, Facebook Live. This is what we do for our candidate forums. And today we're focusing on District 5, the County Commission race in Sarasota. District 5 is Northport. And of course, for the first time in a long time, our commissioners are going to be elected just by the district voters they represent. With me today is Chris Hanks. He is a candidate for District 5. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
So good to be here, Kathy. Thank you.
Yeah. And Chris, you are... you're in the Republican primary, and your opponent is Ron Cutzinger. And Mr. Cutzinger did confirm that he would be with us, but something has come up. He said a scheduling conflict. So what we're going to do today is have you, but we're also joined by Lourdes Ramirez. And Lourdes is going to be with us on the second half of the show, and we'll introduce you more properly then, Lourdes. But we're going to transition into dark money in the second half of the show. But Chris, let's kick it off with, tell us about yourself. For somebody, I know people in Northport know you, but the county is listening. So who are you? And tell us about your background and why you're running for county commission.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm Chris Hanks. I moved in the area in 2008. I'm from Arkansas. Since that time, my wife and I have started a couple of small businesses that have become very successful. We're spread across multiple states. I also am the former mayor of the city of Northport, the current city commissioner. I don't know how many people know this, but the city of Northport is the largest city in 3 counties by population. We're the 3rd largest landmass in the state geographically. We're larger than Orlando. And, I've sat on this city commission going on 4 years now. One of the things I think that I bring is in at least District 5, I am the only experienced candidate that has municipal government experience. And I think that's very important whenever we move into the county. The last 4 years, I've spent time building relationships, not only on a local level, but on a state level and on a national level. Those relationships have helped at least the city of Northport in many ways. One being that we did get the repeal of the CON, or the Certificate of Need law. The city of Northport is the largest city in the entire state without a hospital, and it's very important to the people down here. So the work that we put in, the work that I put in too, that with our representatives, allowed for this to take place. So now it opens up an opportunity for a hospital to come to our area. How that hospital looks, is something to be seen, but definitely it is something that is needed down here. So I have experience with that. I have experience with a large landmass, that was built by general development. So it wasn't built out very well. There's a lot of struggles that we have with over 60,000 plats of land owned by multiple individuals all over the world, and what it takes to build that infrastructure to be able to continue to prosper and grow in a balanced way. I've done that. So, I think I have the experience that is necessary to move on to the county level. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, that's great. You brought up a lot of interesting points. One of them is Northport, and many people may not realize in the county, it's a great point to bring it up, the largest city in the county. And actually, I think it was maybe 6 years ago, that the city of Northport got a seat on the Tourist Development Council in the county, precisely for that reason, because Northport is the largest city. I do want to get a bit to that the hospital. Do you know which hospital is coming, or have you been laying the groundwork for that?
Yeah. So in the past, we have had interest. This is what is quite interesting is we had Universal. I keep wanting to call it Universal Healthcare, but that's an insurance company. Manatee Hospital. There's a hospital in Lakewood Ranch. But anyways, they had interest a couple of years ago to come. They were going to do all the preliminaries, pay all the monies needed in order to file for the CON. And what was interesting is when they did that, multiple hospitals in the area did the same thing. These are hospitals that always tell us that they're interested in our area. They're interested in Northport. But then they do everything they can to block, one, they don't come, and then they do everything that they can to block a business that wants to.
Well, and it's interesting because a CON for the audience is a certificate of need. And, with good development, it's kind of like your platting issue in Northport with so many lots, 60,000 lots. But particularly in healthcare, a certificate of need, you don't want to have 4 cath labs that cannibalize each other for the business. None of them survive very well, and actually the patients lose. There has to be enough market demand, and you can't really be damaging the existing. It's tricky because obviously we want competition. So yeah, that has to be a bit of a challenge. Tell me about, I live up north in the city of Sarasota. And, one of the reasons I like single member districts is because my vote in Northport, when I was electing a District 5 at large, I didn't really know, what was going on in Northport, like the people who lived there. But I'm hearing about some folks with the West Villages talking about de-annexation. And I'm wondering, because you're a city commissioner, you currently are, right? Yes. So what's happening? We've seen this before in Sarasota County from time to time, I guess, but de-annexation of the West Villages, what's going on with that, and how would it impact Northport? Because then Northport wouldn't be the largest city if that actually happened. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and I have to be very careful about what I talk about here because this will end up coming before the board. But there's really there's a handful of individuals that feel the need to de-annex, and whether or not this takes place, honestly, I don't know. I will tell you, I've told folks it's probably easier for Northport to build a rocket ship to Mars than this to take place. I said if Elon Musk moves in, then we have something to look at here. But I just don't think the criteria is met for them. And that's just me initially speaking. There's a lot to come forth. They did bring forth a petition that we now have to create a study for, which will bring us into January, I believe, which will then allow the then Board of Commissioners to look at it. Of course, I won't be on that board at that time, but it'll allow them to take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, I can appreciate some of this is, to be decided, but curious to know how it came about. One of the issues here in the county commission is infrastructure, right? And how do we pay for the services that new growth needs? How do we maintain the level of service that's needed for existing development? And Northport is in a unique situation because you talked about 60,000 lots that are platted. This is land that's already approved for development and has yet to be developed. So tell me about, because the aquatic center, when I asked online for questions, some feedback I got was, well, in 2010, there was actually a referendum that 3-1 was against building an aquatic center, right? But in 2018, the Northport City Commission decided to move forward with that. It's a great facility. I mean, the people who love it really love it. They've been talking, they think it's fantastic. But there's a contingent of folks who said, listen, you never asked us. And when you did ask us, which wasn't all that long ago, we said no, because there's concern about cost. Can you speak to that? What would you tell people who are concerned about how this came about and maybe would say, hey, listen, I don't know if I want people who are going to do this against my will going on to the county? What would you say to that?
Well, I think, questions are always easier asked than they are answered. And the illusion of a question makes every answer seem as though it should be simple, though it's not. 2008 was a completely different time. 2008, we're in the height of our recession. When they
That's
brought the
true.
bond referendum, it was for something. It was for something completely different. It
Okay.
had nothing to do. I mean, you were talking about more money. It was something completely. It was going to be far larger than what we have now, and so the voters voted that down. Absolutely. One of the things, whenever I ran for the city commission, was that I promised to bring in revenue, and that revenue being through commercial development. Right now, most municipalities and cities, they have to be around 25% commercial in order to be a viable city, so that the burden of the tax burden is not placed upon the residential homeowner. It's more placed upon the commercial development. And in order to do that, you kind of look at a chicken and an egg aspect. How do you get business here? Because business looks at several options, but just to make it simple, they look at property values, they look at crime in the area, and they look at rooftops, or if it's light industrial, they look at workforce. If it's retail or restaurants, things like that, they always look at rooftops for the amount of people and density. But in order to get those, you do have to find the residents to move in. And what most residents look for when they move in, to make it simple, is they look for property values, they look for crime, they look for school ratings, good schools, and they look for amenities. And if you don't have amenities, then people don't come. One of the greatest things that are asked every day, at least a couple of years ago, whenever I got in office, is there's nothing to do in Northport. We need things for our children. And I will tell you that was 99% of what I heard. What is there to do for us? We always have to leave our town to do anything. Mm-hmm. And now, what we're starting to hear? I hear folks in Venice saying, hey, look, we don't have a Dick's store. We don't have a Dick's Sporting Goods. Now we're having to go to Northport for anything good. And that's really what the citizens of Northport wanted. And that was something I fight for every day. And we need that good, balanced commercial development in order to take that tax-based burden off of the residential homeowner.
Okay. Yeah, I think you make a great point about placemaking, right? What you're talking about is, and the burden of the tax burden. You do want enough commercial development, to generate the tax base to provide services. So taking that, I want to go in two directions. Tell me about affordable housing. In where I live, many people commute from Northport to come to work up here. But what would you see as the role, as a city commissioner? Maybe tell me what's gone on, with your efforts for affordable housing, but also, with the county commission. What would you want to see? What's your vision for affordable housing in your district?
Sure. So, as anywhere in Sarasota County, here in Northport, we have affordable housing issues. I believe the majority of the reason for that, at least down here specifically, is supply and demand. We just don't have the supply for the demand. Last year, Northport was one of the fastest growing cities, if not the fastest growing city in the state of Florida. We had so many residents moving here. We're doing 12, 15,000 permits every month. We're still blowing and going through that. That supply and demand is very important. Now, I'm not a big proponent of creating government programs and subsidies to help that. I believe what we need to do is we need to bring in solid wage jobs, good paying jobs, so that housing becomes affordable. That way you're not putting the burden again upon the taxpayer, the residents of the city. We do have some aspects. The state does provide grant funding. The federal government provides grant funding for some. We have some apartment complexes coming in that will have some aspect of workforce housing to it. And it is workforce housing. It's not it's not HUD housing or anything like that. So I think that is what is important, pretty much countywide. And I will tell you, currently, Northport again is still the largest landmass. We have the most zone space for commercial development than anywhere else in this county. And I think having that focus, because you mentioned it, Kathy, you said a lot of folks working up north come from Northport, and the majority of our workforce leave our city. to go find a place to work. And that takes about, that drive from South County to North County, depending on the time of year and the time of day, can be an hour long. Within a week, you lose an entire day's time spent with your family. And so I think, making sure that we're bringing jobs down south is very important. Now, as a county governor, obviously, I recognize that I will govern globally. What happens in North County is good for South County, just like what happens in South County is also good for North County. But you mentioned the single voter districts, and I think it's very important to understand why that happened. Now, I have a split view on single member districts, because you had mentioned, voting. I kind of have a hard aspect thinking that I'm going to represent you and you had no say in it. So that kind of bothers me a little bit. But at the same time, the reason this took place was because districts felt like they were not represented or underrepresented. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the things I keep hearing during this cycle from my opponent, and I keep hearing around mostly the North County area, is I'm way too parochial. But isn't that exactly what the single member districts were for and meant to be, was to focus upon your district so you can take the voice of your district to the county level? And I've said it over and over again, and I think it's very reasonable, Kathy, that whenever we're dealing with countywide issues, it is my job to have Northport, Englewood, and South Venice on my lips. What's in it for us down here? How does this play for us? And that's the problem we've had in the past, especially down here, since this is where I live, is that we're never on anybody's lips. And it always begins with a conversation. And unless we are being mentioned, we're never going to be thought about. You've heard the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, it's time to start being a little squeakier so we can get a little bit more of that grease.
Sure. Well, and your point, this would be the first time, to my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure we've never had a commissioner from Northport. Is that right?
Yeah,
county commissioner that lives actually in Northport.
This will make history, Kathy, because we have only been represented one time in our 60-year history, and that was 28 years ago by Mr. Northport, Gene Matthews. He was a school board member, and he did represent us for 4 years. That was during a single-member district time that we had, and then it was repealed after that.
Well, actually, you said school board. So on the county commission, there was nobody ever.
No. Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, and actually, school boards have not been single member district, to my knowledge. Just county.
Yeah, he served on the school board, Kathy, but he never had anybody from Northport government or Northport municipal government serve up there, which I think is very important. And it's history, because we've never had the relationship or the understanding of the largest city in the county that I'll have and I'll take up there.
Okay. So transportation, you're talking about that long commute from Northport, and certainly, it sounds great to want to bring jobs to Northport, but what about solving that problem right now? What are your thoughts about Sarasota's transit and how that can be improved? Or do you think it's basically, functioning well? How do you see it?
No, it's not really functioning well. I think it's a very heavy burden right now. The costs for SCAT is any kind of bus service like this is astronomical. So I think the county's making some good strides towards this. I had mentioned, I saw the county administrator a couple of years ago, Jonathan Lewis, and I had mentioned during some kind of event we were at, and I had mentioned to him, I'd asked him, I said, have you guys considered maybe partnering, doing some kind of partnership with Uber or Lyft. And that was something that I know that they've since looked at and are continuing to formulate, which I think is a good idea. I think, if we can bring the private sector into this a little bit, I think there can be some cost savings. I think if you're talking about mobility also, there's other things that we need to do down here in South County. We have Toledo Blade, which if you take the West Villages and our borders, Toledo Blade's the center of our town. And, most would think it's the far east side, but it's really the center of our town. And it's about a 3.5 to 4 mile jaunt from the end of Toledo Blade to Highway 72, which is Clark Road. When Irma hit, we were bottlenecked at I-75 and River Road. And these are things we really have to take a look at just for the safety of Southwest Florida and its residents, because we are the funnel for all of Southwest Florida. And making sure that we open up that grid a little bit, that would take about a half hour drive. If you want to talk specifically about workers, a half hour off of a commute to be able to go up to 72. Now we have an issue. There is the Carlton Preserve is there, and I recognize that, and I do not want to hinder the preserve in any way. But I think if we look at, and I know the city of Northport's already working with FDOT, but I think if we can get FDOT, the city of Northport, Sarasota County working together, I think that there's something that we can do to make that very drop in the bucket that would benefit not only the economy of South County, but would open up a safe zone for folks whenever they're trying to get out of the area due to a circumstance like Irma. So I think that would be a very I think the return on investment for that would far outweigh anything that we do. You want to make sure that I don't want to build in the Carlton Preserve. I just want, you can make it a scenic route, but I want to make sure that the wildlife is minimally hindered. But I think the importance of that road is high.
Yeah, you bring up an important point too, because when you look at the floodplain maps, actually most of Charlotte County is floodplain A and B. They're very low, near the, gosh, A and B is just right near sea level, really. And so the evacuation for Northport to be able to absorb, the county below or south is important. Tell me, I want to get to, I feel like I have to ask you about taxation. I know you in Northport, because you do have so much single family home development and you're working on commercial, but then you also have the West Villages, which is a new development. And there were some folks who were pretty upset. A gentleman, Victor Dobrin, I know, challenged the commission regarding a tax increase. Can you tell us what happened there, and how would you speak to those folks and say, listen, I'm the guy to vote for, and speak to the taxation piece? Go ahead.
Well, all right. Well, Victor Dobrin is one of the leaders of the de-annexation. He's up in the West Villages. One of the things that whenever I came into office that I was dealing with was 10 years worth of commission mismanagement. We ended up with about 40 or 50 of our first responders and officers that positions that we couldn't fill. We couldn't provide the safety for our area. One of the things that we always pride ourselves in is the police department. We are a double Excelsior rated police department. That's the highest you can get in the nation. Our fire district, we are an ISO 1 rating. There's only 350 nationwide that have that rating. I mean, it's a very small number, and we pride ourselves in what we're able to provide. Now what that does is that also causes your insurance rates to go down, because we are highly rated. But in order to maintain that, we have to maintain not only the firefighters and the police officers, we have to maintain their equipment. We have to maintain the administrative costs that go with that. So that's very important. One of the things that we had to look at also was the West Villages hitting benchmarks. By law, we have to provide certain things. We have conditions as a city. We have to provide this district. And so as they hit those benchmarks, which they've been hitting very, very regularly, because they were the third fastest growing master plan development in the country right now. We have to provide wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants. We have to provide firefighters to them, a substation. We have to provide fire trucks. Those are like $2 million a piece. And all these things will come and do. So, I understand Mr. Dobrin's complaint. It's important to understand that the majority of this tax increase was for him. It was for the West Villages. The entire city absorbed what the West Villages needs were. Now, when you look at that, you always hear there's a 30% tax increase. Well, that's not even true. What they were doing was they were taking the proposed rollback rate with the proposed rate, which was about a 30% span, and they're saying, look at what this is. And the reality is we didn't go with either one of those. But we were looking at a condition where our lift stations were 60 years old. They were failing. Lift stations are what pumps your raw sewage to the wastewater treatment plant. Look around the county at the struggle that we've been going through. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we had 26 million gallons of sewage dump into the Gulf. We have had situations where we've dealt with red tide and inland blue-green algae. These are things that we have to fix. One of the things that we did was we invested in our community. Listen, there's not a person I know that would walk into their home, their pipes burst, and not fix them. There's nobody that I know that if their septic tank is backing up into their bathtub would allow their kids to bathe in it. You're going to do what it takes to take care of your greatest asset. And this is our community. This is our asset. We need to care for it. We had 10 years worth of mismanagement. And the reality is that we not only fixed those lift stations, we expanded our canal systems by 3-foot capacity. Because when Irma blew through, we had millions of dollars worth of damage in our northern district. We had to borrow the sheriff's emergency vehicles. We had to get the county first responders. Charlotte County came in to help us because we were getting folks out of their homes. We added that 3-foot capacity. In the last couple of years, we've had some of the wettest seasons in our history, and we have seen zero flooding. We haven't had any of that damage. We've invested in those lift stations, and the county's going through it. We have zero spillage.
Yeah. So you're what you're basically saying is these were infrastructure needs that just couldn't wait. Chris, let's talk, quickly. We don't have much time left, and I want to give you the opportunity to say, I'm going to be asking you, why should people vote for you? What is the case for you versus Mr. Cutzinger? But, I think, and in my time on the board of CONA, the Council of Neighborhood Associations, and on my radio show, I talk a lot about in development that pays its own way. That's a favorite phrase of Dan Lobeck, but what is that really? In our county charter, we have a requirement for fiscal neutrality for new development out east. But what it means is, and you touched on it with commercial development, you want to have a tax base that will generate enough revenue comfortably without burdening people, so that these things are paid for, right? And one of the challenges with Northport, and it's a challenge all over the United States, is sprawl development, just single family homes that you have to get in a car to do anything. They require so many more services than they can pay for. I believe the statistic Joe Minicozy came up with, and Sarasota County was like the first county they studied to look at this. His firm, Urban 3, found that a single family home in Sarasota County takes 80 years to pay for its infrastructure needs just from the taxes that it generates, which is longer than the life of the infrastructure. So you're talking about aging infrastructure, and yet our development style doesn't generate the tax revenue. So my question is, what thought have you given to having Northport become more urban, meaning it's the urban, like the city of Sarasota is actually a donor taxing body. We contribute more than we need, than we take out to the county. But can we create in the county urban centers like that, where you have more intense commercial, you have apartments, you have walkable development that actually generates more tax revenue? From your vantage point, what do you think about that? Do you believe in that idea? And is that a possibility for Northport?
Sure. Your question's very intricate.
It is, I know, yeah.
but that, Northport's a little bit different just because of our size, also. I know down here, one of the things that, I think is important for us to look at is, I keep talking about the 3 pillars of our economy because we need to get folks working. So talk about the 3 pillars of our economy, which is tourism. We need to talk about seniors, which is housing, healthcare, and hospitality, because if you cover the seniors, you cover everybody, and also agriculture. One of the things we've really gotten away from is agriculture, and we saw during Corona, that our national grid of food was extremely strained because all our food comes from just a handful of companies, and we've lost our local growers. So one of the things I think we need to look at, and I've talked about, is hydroponics. Because hydroponics use about 50% land space. And I'm going to get to your answer. It uses about 50% land space with about a 280% growth, production growth, but it uses zero chemicals in the soil. You're helping your environment, but you have that extra space. One of the things down here in Northport is you're not able to build a building more than 2 stories, I believe, 2, I think, depending on the area. And one of the things that I have mentioned is we keep talking about our acreage having to be 25% built out in commercial to cover that viability. And I have mentioned, let's stop looking at acreage, because things are different today with technology, with Amazon, Walmart, all going online. Brick and mortar businesses are, they're not dying, but they're contracting. And we stop looking at the acreage and start looking at density. And you can offer incentives for businesses to build up, densify their commercial area, which is a little more of what you're talking about, utilizing the excess space. If you can take 10 acres, pull it down to 5, build up and make it more dense, you can preserve the land around it, you can conserve it, you can create parkland. If you're talking about the agriculture that I'm talking about, you could even create tech industry to collaborate with the hydroponic agriculture or aeroponic agriculture industry that you have there. There's just so many ways that you can do this, and I think doing that county-wide is something we need to look at.
Okay, you're listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. I want to remind you that under Florida law, all registered voters are permitted to vote by mail. Voters are encouraged to consider this option for the August primary and the November general election, as the situation with COVID-19 may make people hesitant to go to the polls in person. You may request a vote by mail ballot in person, by mail, email, fax, or by phone. Only the voter or a designated member of his or her immediate family or legal guardian can request a vote by mail ballot for the voter. To request this ballot, a vote by mail ballot in Sarasota County, you can go to sarasotavotes.com or call 941-861-6000. My guest for this half hour has been Chris Hanks. He's running for County Commission in District 5. Your opponent, Ron Cutzinger, you had a conflict. He's not with us. So the second half hour, we're going to talk dark money with Lourdes Ramirez. But Chris Hanks, tell us, why should people vote for you? This is the Republican primary. What distinguishes you, and how do they get in touch with you if they want to support you?
Wonderful. Well, you can go to my website, www.chrishankscampaign.com. You can see about me. You can see some of my policy issues. Between my opponent and me, I'm the only one that has a website that shows that. His says donate. Mine says here's about me if you want to donate. Okay. And you can visit. I also leave my cell phone number there, so you can contact me directly. I've always been open source that way. My benefit is that I am the only elected municipal, a person with municipal government experience. My relationships that I have built have helped us, and I'm the only one campaigning right now talking about South County. I'm the only one that says when you need roads up north, that's great because that benefits the whole county. But I also have a fire station down in Englewood with the roof caving in that can't even support the firefighters that are in it. So let's take that $20 million for roads. I need about 75 down here so we can fix this fire station. I'm the only one that is doing that. And I think that is exactly what the voters wanted whenever they did this. So I'm here for South County. I live down here. I've been down here. I understand the issues of what it feels to be unrepresented or underrepresented, and I know how to get the job done. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris, for being with us. Good luck with your campaign. It is a primary in the Republican Party for District 5, August 18th. And then the winner of the primary will face Alice White, the Democrat, in the general election. So good luck, and we appreciate you coming on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chris, take care. So with me now is Lourdes Ramirez. Lourdes, why don't you just introduce yourself? If regular listeners know who you are, but tell us about yourself real quick.
Well, thank you for having me on. I put the full name when typing it in, so it looks like it's Lourdes. And I'm been very active in the community. I'm president of Kona Council of Neighborhood Associations, as well as Siesta Key Associations in the past. I'm very active in politics, and I'm currently running for Charter Review Board. We're not talking about it.
Your audio is cutting in and out a little bit, Lourdes. If you can, bring it closer, maybe would help. Okay.
Okay, how's that?
That seems good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm currently running, as I mentioned, for Charter Review Board. So I wanted to, I'm glad you have me on to talk about dark money, since I've seen a lot of negative ads out there, and I didn't realize that the same dark money PACs was also contributing to negative mailers for Chris Hanks. It's interesting to see how.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, and we appreciate you coming on. Obviously, we were expecting Mr. Cutzinger, but very grateful that you can join me. And there's always something to talk about, unfortunately, about dark money. I am going to pull up a few documents and share my screen for those of you who are watching online. And of course, I will explain it all to people who are listening. But Chris Hanks was the target of a mailer from a PAC called Florida Values Coalition. And so I'm bringing that up right now. Florida Values Coalition. I'm showing you the screen. Oh no, this is something different. Okay, can you see that on there? Yeah, Florida Values Coalition. Yeah. What's different about this PAC, and they're putting out negative mailers about Chris Hanks. They're supporting Ron Cutzinger. What's different about this PAC is, often there's always a PAC shuffle game, a PAC shell game going on where one PAC's giving to another. But when it goes back 2 or 3 PACs, when it's very difficult to see the individual donor. Typically in a PAC like Florida Country, which is putting out mailers against Mike Hutchinson, Florida Country PAC, you can see the donors a little more easily. This one's all PACs, all political committees donating to Florida Values Coalition. So you can see there's about 5 of them. Suncoast Patriots is the one that's also donating to Florida Country, which is attacking Mike Hutchinson. And these are Republicans running for the county commission. So if we take a look at Florida Values Coalition, then there's Suncoast Patriots. You try to figure out, well, who is actually donating to these PACs? And so to bring up, let's see, I'm trying to find Suncoast Patriots and who's donating to Suncoast Patriots. And this is a PAC that's going against the 2 Republicans that I mentioned for county commission. So who's donating there? You see there's about $85,000 from Pat Neal that is in that committee. Granted, that donation is a while back from 2017, but that's really the one that is the obvious local connection. And then there's also an LLC that is connected to, it's a Delaware LLC. It's not an LLC that's local. And finally, one of the strangest things, I'm not going to show the screen on this one. One of the strangest things is when you peel back to a second PAC called Citizens Speaking Out, they have a PAC donation from Economic Improvement Comp. So this is like 3 steps away. I can't find that political committee on the state website. It's the second time that I can't find a PAC that has donated, which is completely bizarre. and really a question for the state. How can you accept a donation from a Florida PAC when it's not on your website? And so the level of dark money that's happening in county commission races, again, it's the first time I've really tracked it in real time. Usually we're looking back at what's gone on. But Suncoast Patriots with 85 grand from Pat Neal is very active in trying to knock out Hutchinson and Hanks, Mike Hutchinson. Lourdes, you've been a target of dark money when you ran for county commission. What is it like to be seeing this in real time?
Well, that's why I'm grateful that you had that booklet that explained and just the information that's out there. And I think it's good that people start to see it real time, because looking, hindsight is always 20/20. And then people come up to me afterwards like, I didn't know that, all these big developers were supporting and paying for a tax on you. And had I known, I would have just, disregarded all of the negative mailers. So now it's different. Now we can go out and say, okay, look, right now, the mailer you got today.
Yeah.
Look at the Florida country. I have proof that these big developers have put lots of money, and you have to question why these developers are putting so much money into supporting Mike Hutchinson's opponent. What are they looking for? What are they trying to buy from the county commission? And that's a good questions that voters need to think about. Like, why are they trying to buy this election? So having
having it in real time is important. And just so everyone, listeners, understand out there, we're now in the crunch phase of the election. What do I mean by that? And August 18th, I always say to everybody, this is an election. School board and sheriff are going to be decided on August 18th, and they're important local races. So you really have to show up on August 18th, get that mail-in ballot, vote early, vote in person. But the last 2 weeks are when the mailers heat up and the lying really can get out of hand. I'm thinking just from a historic perspective with Joe McClash is just the best example of somebody who was flat out lied about. And this happened in 2012 in Manatee County, and it was a great example of how mailers and messages in the last 2 weeks of a campaign can really hurt a candidate, and you don't even know who's trying to hurt you. And so these guys, let's see, it was Take Back Our Government, and this was a PAC where Bob Wechter was the head of Take Back Our Government. And Take Back Our Government got money from the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange, from Florida West Coast Holdings, which is a firm that was at the same address as Carlos Baruch Companies. There was Committee to Protect Florida Seniors, another PAC, Citizens Have Rights in Sarasota. But they put out mailers against Joe McClash, a 22-year incumbent, basically lying about him. He's a conservative Republican. He was a smart growth advocate, an environmentalist. He was definitely a conservative Republican, but he cared about those issues. And the woman running against him was Betsy Benak. She had been, she won. It was a close race, but they were saying Joe McClash favored abortion. They were saying that Joe McClash was favored Obamacare, that he was supporting Obama, which wasn't true, and he had no time. Well, first, he had no idea who was really attacking him because the mailers came out so late and it was a new tactic, but he also had no time. The last 2 weeks of an election, you don't have time to answer these negative attacks. So, I think if you're going to be fair when you're running, although I know that that's naive, right? Some people, they're not going to. You put it out there and you show your face,
Right.
right? You say, I'm saying this. It's me, and I'm saying this about you. But that's not what the PACs do. Obviously, the whole deal is to make sure the voter doesn't know who's saying what. And because they're anonymous, there's a license with the truth that can happen. And it certainly did with Mr. McClash. And as you know, Take Back Our Government was a committee. I know, Lourdes, you know this, that was chaired by Bob Wechter, who was a former GOP chair. What I want to ask you, Lourdes, is in a lot of the dark money research I've done, it's actually targeted at, the negative mailers are targeted at Republicans. You know, they favor, this isn't really so much about party, in my opinion, as it is about power and getting the person in there that's going to do what you want, the person who's going to do what you prefer. Tell me about this, Republicans going after Republicans with dark money.
Well, and full disclosure, I do work and volunteer Mike Hutchinson's campaign, and I see it there. And I don't see it as Republicans going after Republicans, because these developers are rhinos. They're Republican only in name, name only, and they only donate to Republican causes so they can claim that they're Republican. But everything they do doesn't, follow our values. But the reason why they attack Republicans, we do have a large percentage of voters who are Republican. And they know that.
Yeah, and just to say that the voter registration advantage in the county is with the Republican Party. And we have had a Republican county commission for 50 years, since 1970. Largely, I think, because when people go into the voting booth in November, they're checking their party box. I hope that changes and people really look at the candidates. But yeah, so go ahead.
And if you have a good Republican like Mike Hutchinson, who has the values, plus also concerned about how we develop in the county and how we protect our natural lands, it's a good balance. But the developers don't want that. They want someone they can control. They want somebody who does their bidding. And so I don't see it as Republicans going after Republicans. I see it as developers putting on the Republican mantle in order for them to pretend that they are Republicans in order to attack people who may not do what they want. And that's really true in this particular case. We've been getting negative mailers on Mike Hutchinson. That makes no sense. Mike Hutchinson is one of those Republicans who attends all these Republican events and is part of the chairman's circle. And in his campaign, he's, and I'm throwing this off the top of my head, he had about 40,000 in his campaign, of which 32,000 came from his own pocket. He decided to self-fund because he was concerned about, these developers who might think they would, if they gave him money, that he would be beholden to them, and he would not. So he funded his own campaign, and he does get campaign contributions from a lot of Republicans. I think he got 2 checks, maybe 3, from people concerned in the celery fields area, because his opponent voted for the dump at the celery fields. So there were Democrats who voted to give, I think maybe 2 or 3 checks to Mike's campaign. But now the PAC is making it, they're sending out these mailers that saying he's funded by Democrats in to try to persuade Republican voters that he is supported by Democrats. And that's not true. The majority of his funds came from his own pocket. And like I said, 2 or 3 checks, which is the same as Moran has received, his opponent, from Democrats. But that's the lies they like to put out there, because it's worked before. In the city of Venice race, there was a woman a Republican, and I know it's nonpartisan, but still it happened. And they started to have a campaign that said that she was supported by Democrats, and she lost that election. Even though it wasn't true. And so I think that tactic in a Republican primary to try to label someone that they're not a Republican and they're funded by Democrats is just a lie they put out there to hope that persuades Republican not to look at the real Republican, which is Mike Hutchinson.
Right. Well, you know, I think it's one of the things that when I share dark money research with people, because there may be some idea that this is a factor, but the amount of money is a surprise to people. You know, this Florida Strong Dark PAC now has about $100,000 in it. You know, Florida Values Coalition. Let me just take a look there. It's tens of thousands of dollars for a county commission race. That PAC has $41,300 in it, and you know, a lot of times people think these races don't matter, but when it comes to our quality of life and what's going on at a local level, and actually, you know, if you're concerned about your taxes or schools, all of these things, the environment, so many environmental decisions are actually happening, land use decisions, what are wetlands, you know, celery fields is a great example. You know, that was a really positive move by the county commission to restore the wetland for stormwater management. These are local decisions. You know, people who care about the environment often think about, you know, some guy in a Greenpeace boat saving the whales, and that's important, you know, but red tide issues, what's going on with nitrates in our water because the infrastructure out east has been outdated and failing since 2013. That is a county commission issue. So knowing who these people are, regardless of party, is super important, because whatever party they're in, if they're aligned with special interests, they may not listen to you. So we're coming up at the end of the hour, Lourdes, but I'm curious to your thoughts about water quality and infrastructure, those kinds of things that the county impacts, the commission.
The taxes, you know, and you've talked about urban sprawl that doesn't pay for itself. And a lot of people don't realize how much their taxes are being shifted to pay for new development, whether it's sewer fees, and that the new developments, especially these sprawling new developments out east, require a lot of tax money. And you know, that's the reason why the developers really want to control the county commission. It's money that they don't want to spend for their development, and it's a private industry. And if you couldn't afford to build your community with the infrastructure it needs, then you shouldn't be building it. The taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. And it's a good example. You had Chris Hanks there before and talked about Northport. If anybody went to Fruitville Library and just look at all the new roads that's being built, one of them called Lakewood Ranch Boulevard to support Lakewood Ranch, you know, you should get mad. I drive around and I see potholes everywhere, and it's a problem because they're ignoring existing infrastructure and existing needs like River Road in order to put in these new projects and these new roads for new development. Even recently, there was a road that was supposed to follow I-75, like a frontage road, and it was pushed more east to give Pat Neal new roads for his new sprawling developments out there. So it's important to know who your county commissioners are and who the candidates are and where they stand on this and who's supporting these candidates, so you know why you have to go out and vote for the correct person.
Well, the one, you know, everyone gets to choose, and I think the issues you're bringing up, and I talk about a lot, it's like taking a long view, because the gist of the matter is there's a great, you know, it's called a Ponzi scheme, and if you were to Google Charles Marone and the growth Ponzi scheme, he has a great blog called Strong Towns, and actually Daniel Harages works for him. He's a local, he's local, Daniel is, but he's an editor with Strong Towns. And they basically say, you know, the way we're developing in the United States with all front loaded. You know, we're not taking care of our infrastructure. And the Bee Ridge water facility, which kept spilling nitrates and phosphates into the Philippi Creek Basin, which then got into the bay. And we have red tide, you know, and then the county was sued for failing to maintain our infrastructure. Well, why didn't they maintain it? And to your point, they're building new stuff for the new developments, but they're not taking care of the existing. And why is this? Because there's a perpetual shortfall that they keep making up with new construction. But ultimately, when you're all built out, as counties on the East Coast have found out, those bills come due. You know, you got about 8 years on the front with the new development where you're flush and you're getting the money that is filling the coffers. But once things start breaking and needing repair and maintenance, it's a different story. It hurts the municipal budgets, and which is why in Northport, you know, they're looking at tax increases and people are really upset. Well, you've got to go deeper to the foundation of the problem. And without, if you can't build past 2 stories, frankly, in Northport, you're getting less value out of your building. And there is a place for higher density. It does pay the bills, but it's where you put it and how much that is so key to creating a good place. So Lourdes, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's great to see you. For everyone listening, for 30 years, Legal Aid of Minnesota, with offices in Sarasota, Bradenton, and Venice, has provided free civil legal help for their low-income neighbors in Sarasota and Manatee County by partnering with local lawyers. These are challenging times. If you are facing an emergency with issues like evictions, domestic violence, reemployment, or loss of benefits, Legal Aid of Minnesota is there to help. Information about qualification can be found online at legalaidminnesota.org and by phone at 941-366-0038. I want to remind you all to vote. August 18th is the election for school board and for sheriff. It's so important for you to research these candidates and decide, you know, who you want to support. Of course, if you're in a party, there are other primaries that will matter. So thanks so much for listening. You've been listening to WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton. Thanks for listening. Make it a great day and be sure to stay tuned now to Carlos Pagan and MedTropics.